community leaders. Richard Calderon is our fearless leader with Microsoft. He couldn't be here tonight, but he does say hello from afar. We do have a good team now that we put together. This is a user group, 7 years of proud history. We rebooted in February, so we've got a great team of co-leaders. Uday, if you don't mind standing up. Uday is our programming chair, okay? And Andrew Billings is our sponsorship and social organizer. Gina Rosenthal, who could not be here, she is our online marketing and social. Jim McFadden, if you would stand up. Jim is our liaison with our friends here at Rackspace. And let's see if I missed anyone. I'll be introducing our other godfather here in just a second. I do want to make sure that we all recognize that our user group would not have been able to get back up and running without a commitment and our support from our friends at Rackspace. So Matt Jagiello. Thank you very much, Matt. And Carla Kroll is the SME executive recruiter who is also our sponsor, executive sponsorship. So she was the one who had to sign off on it. Matt's the one who had to actually commit to doing the work. Just so you know, tonight's session is being recorded. So we will be making it available on our new YouTube channel, and Rackspace is going to be uploading it to their new YouTube channel. And Matt is also going to make the deck available, so we will post the link and circulate that. Any questions? If you're not comfortable with that, then the camera's there and you can move over there. So we do have sponsors tonight, and I do want to ask Andrew to come up here and introduce our sponsor.
So tonight's sponsor is the Rackspace Cloud Office team. So we have Bill over here and Tyler, who will be introducing the Rackspace Cloud Office team and kind of what they provide. They've also provided t-shirts and notebooks, and the meal is sponsored by them. So give it up for Tyler.
No, stay up here. Be a model. You're a very good t-shirt model. Hey guys, so I've been on the it's now called the Cloud Office team. Before that, it was just the SharePoint team. So we took over Exchange and Skype for Business and the whole 365 portfolio for our sellers a couple, 18 months ago. So we became Cloud Office at Rackspace. I joined the team a little more than 3 years ago, and I think within a day of accepting the offer, I was on a plane to go to a SharePoint Saturday. So been meeting with groups like yours all over the US. This is a much more convenient one than having to fly to St. Louis on a Saturday. So I really appreciate you guys doing that. It is better. It is. I can wear shorts, which is nice. So the Cloud Office team is a team of technical sales specialists that are aligned to our sales generalists. Some of them are here in Austin. A lot of them are in San Antonio at the mothership, and then we've got a lot of them in the field as well. So our team is aligned to those sales generalists to help them really understand the Office 365 portfolio, the SharePoint portfolio, as well as Exchange and Skype for Business in the on-prem deployments. So we're very excited to be working with you guys. We have worked with you guys, at least in the 3 years I've been doing it. I've been to, I don't know, half a dozen events where I see a lot of the same faces I see here. So very good to see you guys inside my building. Very, very excited to have you here. Please enjoy the food. Please enjoy the t-shirts. Make sure, I know Bill worked very hard to get you guys cool swag. So please be sure to take it. Otherwise, Bill has to take it home. So you guys have been to SharePoint Saturdays before. You understand how this works. Okay, the only ask I have, we're going to be live blogging the announcement tomorrow. Tomorrow?
So it's the announcement from Microsoft is on May 4th.
Okay, that's not tomorrow. You had told me tomorrow, so I was prepared to say tomorrow. Okay, so May 4th. Yeah, it says it up here now. Anyway, on May 4th at 11:30 a.m., I believe that's Central Time, check out sharepoint.rackspace.com/live-event. We will be live blogging that event on May the 4th, not tomorrow, the 28th of April. So, very glad to have you guys here. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, to the rest of the team at Rackspace who made it happen. They just gave me the mic, and that's always a bad decision. So, any questions before I hand it over? Great, excellent. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Tyler. And thanks. I just want to note that this all came together, crash and burn, literally from Friday to, started Friday, and we've got Matt to thank. We have Bill and Tyler to thank as well. So thanks for putting together the sponsorship. Food is always good. And it's, by the way, exciting to hear the new product you're rolling out. Yoo-hoo. So just real quickly, we are going to run an hour in 15 minutes. So Matt has an hour for his presentation. And then 15 minutes of Q&A. We're going to wrap up by 8. We'll have some community announcements. So if there's anything you want to share with the group, we'll do that at 8:15. We'll conclude by 8:30. So Matthew McDermott was a co-founder of this user group. 7 years ago, Matthew and Richard Calderon, who is our community leader,
And Brad Friels.
Brad Friels. Oh, Brad.
Props to Brad Friels for being our original Microsoft sponsor.
Awesome. And so Matt and Richard, humble as they were and still are, were our godfathers. They just kind of carried the weight of organizing the user group and built it up over the 7 years. And speaking as a beneficiary and someone who their efforts helped me matriculate, it's really much appreciated. Both of them got put out on the road, and the user group kind of fell dormant. And then again, with Rackspace's assistance and with Richard and Matt's background assistance, we're back up and running. So Matt is a co-founder and a godfather. So he is, Matt, just a couple of bullets. He is a founder at Aptillion, is one of his roles. Matt is an 8-time SharePoint MVP.
Actually, that's old. It's 10 now.
10?
Yeah, January got 10.
10-time. And Matt, you found something out yesterday. What was that?
MCSE SharePoint.
Matt's a new MCSE SharePoint certification, which you did in an afternoon, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, okay.
No, it actually took a year. I started it back in Ignite. So I did the 2 identities exams back in Ignite, and then another year of study to get it to where it is.
That's fantastic. So Matt is a specialist in SharePoint, SharePoint integration, SharePoint strategies, speaker, content author, blog. He's got a good blog. Matt's the kind of guy that drops a blog post when there's something to say. So he's one of the blogs that I subscribe to.
That's a good way of putting it, that I don't blog every day. Heck, I don't even blog every month. I just blog when I like that,
Yeah,
Brian. That's a little diplomatic. I'm going to steal that.
No.
Just when I have something to say.
But it's serious. It's serious. If there's a drop there, then I read it. Social is also one of Matt's specialties. On his free time, he's a great bartender and cook, and I'm still waiting for my invitation, as so should you. But really, as you maybe see from Matt's blog and from his intro on our meetup site, Matt really does something very unique for the community. He is a canine handler for the Canine Search, which is an Austin volunteer group, not just local PD, but the feds. Okay, so you better watch out, because Matt can sick the dogs from the feds on you. So Matt is going to talk to us, but I just want to point out one other thing. Matt is a instructor with Critical Path, and his knowledge and his background is going to become really important for what's happening with 2016. Matt's been with Critical Path for I don't know how long.
6 years.
6 years. If you go and look him up on the Critical Path website, he's been there 6 years. He's got an average of 5 out of 5 stars for every class that he teaches. So we're really lucky to have Matt here tonight, and let's welcome Matthew McDermott.
Thanks. Thank you, Brian. That was really generous of you. I appreciate that. So I'm going to talk to you about SharePoint hybrid. First, I'm going to try to extract this microphone so I can walk around because I'm a walker. So just a real quick show of hands. How many of you are SharePoint IT pros? That's kind of how you label yourself. And how many of you are SharePoint end users? Okay. How many of you are SharePoint on-prem only? And Office 365 only? And in between, you got a little of both. Cool. So when we're talking about hybrid search, what I want to try to impress upon you is if you're an end user, it's important to you to know that there's a use case here that makes your lives a lot easier, and maybe your admins don't know it. Okay? So just because you're an end user doesn't mean there's not content for you tonight. If you're an IT pro and you're just SharePoint on-prem and there's absolutely no way on the planet your company is ever going to use the cloud, there's still some important stuff here. Okay? Because what Microsoft is doing with hybrid is they're giving us ways to, remember back when we did the SharePoint 24, it was the 2014 SharePoint conference in Anaheim. Microsoft said, we're all in with the cloud, y'all are coming with us. And what did everybody say? No way. I went, okay, so they backed it off a little bit and they said, here's a way for you to take a step into the cloud. OneDrive for Business, back when it was called SkyDrive, right? We'll give you a terabyte per user in your company. Can you guys support a terabyte per user in your company? No, and we don't want to, right? But for the companies that did, they went, what? So I can just take these awful personal sites that I'm supporting right now badly, I can move them into Office 365. I can give a terabyte of personal storage to people. They can use those sites for storing their documents when they're just starting to ideate on them. There's a word for you, Brian. When they're starting to think about beginning to commence to start the next thing that's going to save the company, and they're not on VPN where they need to be to put it into SharePoint on-prem, but they can put it into Office 365. So what Microsoft started doing was tailoring hybrid workloads. If you're doing any binging around, hybrid workloads is a good way to find the most recent content, because a lot of the content for SharePoint Hybrid was written back in 2015. A lot of this has changed. Some of my slides, they're about a month old. So the other thing I've been doing recently, and Brian mentioned this, is I've been writing the next version of Critical Path's SharePoint admin class. It's a SharePoint admin class for 2016. We took the 2013 class, we took the stuff that was the best in the 2013 class, we threw away a whole bunch of stuff that the students said, you know what, we're either not using this or we're not using it enough to have a whole dedicated 3-hour conversation around. Combined that stuff down and then crammed in everything I'm going to teach you tonight about hybrid plus labs on how to set it up. So if any of you ever do your own courseware, you know that when you generate those images, those are a pain. So at the beginning of our manual, it says, images in this book may not appear this way in class. Because literally, during the 3 weeks that I've been doing the images for just the hybrid class, the images have changed 3 times. The wizards are changing. The UI changes constantly. So Microsoft is revving Office 365 at an immense pace. They tell us 6 weeks, but it's faster than that, I can tell you. New stuff is coming in every single day. And so it's coming in different places, which makes it a challenge for organizations. But the stuff I'm going to teach you tonight, all of this stuff works. It works right now, and it's very stable. And I don't know why we keep going backwards. This might drive me a little crazy. So we're going to do just a brief thing on SharePoint hybrid history. We're going to talk about Microsoft's SharePoint hybrid roadmap. And I use that phrase because when you go look in TechNet for how do I do the step-by-step? How do I take the steps? And I've got a slide in a little bit that'll talk about that. Use the hybrid roadmap. It'll get you the most recent content. Then we'll go through search specifically as a use case. I'll show you the other stuff It's not hard to set up. I mean, it's trivially easy to set up. Search is a bit more complicated, but then we'll talk about hybrid planning. So this is really more than just hybrid search. It's really about SharePoint hybrid. So the hybrid story is that we want to make it easier for our end users to find stuff wherever the content resides. You know, I think about looking for my mom's a fantastic cook. Whenever I go home, I spend time, because I do love to cook, I spend time going through her recipe books. I look through 9 different recipe books. I look through 8 different recipe card files, trying to find, you know, her beef stroganoff recipe or her chicken cacciatore recipe. No index, stuff scattered everywhere, right? Then I showed her how to use Office Lens on her iPhone to put the images of the typed cards, because her friends used to give her typed cards. We photographed the chicken cacciatore recipe that she got from Fran Terolini. So this is like authentic chicken cacciatore. It was typed out like on a typewriter. Photographed it with Office Lens. She threw it into OneNote, and within a minute, I'm able to search for cacciatore, and it finds it because of OCR. Find stuff where it resides. Get it into the index. Suddenly, she's photographing everything, okay? So find the content where it lives. Make it easier to find. Any company has a hybrid environment when they have applications that are spread across their domain plus Office 365. That's the definition we're going to use for hybrid. If you are a company that has an Office 365 tenant and an on-premises environment of SharePoint, then you are hybrid. So the hybrid search solution in 2013, when it was first introduced, was not really hybrid. It was query federation. So query federation simply means I've got an index in the cloud, that's my Office 365 stuff, and I've got an index on premises that is my file shares, that is my SharePoint stuff, that is my BCS, my business connectivity services, maybe databases and things like that. And then what I do is I go into my search center in SharePoint and I do a search, and I've got kind of a web part up here that shows me my on-premises stuff, and I've got a web part down here that shows me my Office 365 stuff. It's kayak.com, right? It's 5 different panels that have nothing to do with one another in terms of relevance. It looks kind of like this. And this was impossible. It was hard to set up, but it was impossible to sell. For the amount of work that it took to make all of this happen, it was very, very not bueno. So at the top here, we've got a result block that is showing the search results from SharePoint. The bottom, we've got the result block that's showing the public SharePoint site. So this is Office 365 content. Up here is my on-premises stuff. It's just not that great, okay? It's just not that great. Now, you can make it a little better. You can put a link down here, like a more link that would link you to that search center and be able to find it. But ultimately, it was just not a great experience. And so Microsoft started looking at ways to make this happen a little bit better. And the infrastructure, this is the scariest slide, okay, because of the infrastructure required. But the reality is, in my class, I'm going to pitch my class a lot tonight because I'm really proud of what we've been able to do. So here's what we do in the class. I find out I've got 10 students. So I stand up 10 demo tenants. I go into Office 365 and I click that, I go into incognito mode and I click that link 10 times, create 10 different tenants. And then during class, we take a virtual machine that's running on the student's desktop and we connect it to Office 365. We do this dir sync. So this is our virtual machine here. We've got our Active Directory server. We set up, stop doing that. Come on back. Oh, I see what it's doing. Okay, here we go. Matt, you want me to click? Yeah, I may have to do that. Here, let me get back here. I thought that was going to work a little better. That's all right. I can do it. Let's do that. Let's do that. And I'll have you do the build for me, Brian. Okay. So here we go. So the first bit is I've got a domain controller. We download Azure Active Directory Connect, which is just a little sync engine. It's FIM. And then we connect that to our Azure Active Directory account, which we get with our Office 365 tenant. It's actually really simple. Okay, I mean, literally, you download this, and if you have the credentials for your Office tenant, see it? Don't worry about the power. It'll stay. If you have the credentials, you're connected. It takes like 10 minutes. Okay, it's super easy to do. Then what we're not doing in labs, we're not doing this ADFS stuff. Why do we do ADFS? We do ADFS so that our end users, like let's say that you are from Rackspace. You log into your Rackspace laptop. You don't want your end users to have to log in again to Office 365. And so we do ADFS so that when they go on their domain machine to Office 365, they log in automatically. The other thing you get with ADFS, if you set it up correctly, is if they go home and they're on their wife's school laptop, not on the domain, and they hit that same link, it redirects them, but it actually authenticates off your ADFS server. Plus you get to brand it and make it look all pretty. But then the last piece is this reverse proxy. So the reverse proxy allows you to have, if you have content, if you're in Office 365, in the Search Center in Office 365, and you are looking at a search result that's actually coming from SharePoint or file server on premises, it allows you to see the preview. So that extra little bit. See, it's touchy, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I'm not touching it.
Yeah, maybe it's on a timer. Anyway, so that's what all of these pieces do. The first bit, this sends our identity up to the cloud so that we can have security trimmed results. The second bit up here is so that we have single sign-on, and the third bit is so that we have our previews. Click. Okay. So the search experience. So the goal of the team that came up with this solution, they had 4 goals. Click. The first one is search from anywhere, even on premises. Okay? They also wanted the Office 365 Search Center and Delve to be able to process on-premises results. Okay, so now you get the machine learning. You get the, hey, Uday and I were in a meeting together, and during that meeting, Brian showed us a slide deck. In Delve, here's the slide deck. Okay, because it's shown to you. It has that knowledge. Next one. Finally, thirdly, preview access and content when you're connected to any network. It's not just your corporate network. But if you're in Office 365, Office 365 is going to show you those results because it has a connection to your network for previews. And the last one is relevancy and deep refiners. This is the piece that I find most important because now instead of having 2 separate sets of search results, kayak.com, that are not necessarily relevance ranked, I have a disconnected search experience. With one index, with an Office 365 hybrid index, I have one set of results that are all relevance matched to one another. And then when I go and say, you know what, the stuff from this site collection is way more important than anything else, that relevance tuning happens for everybody. It's not just if you happen to be using my search center and you happen to be using my web part, okay? It's across the entire solution. Next slide. Yes, I will show you a demo. Okay, so let me show you what this looks like today. Let me show you what this looks like today in Office 365. So this is the mother of all demo machine setups. Just for the total nerd value, I have to show you this. So if you can see the number of servers that are running here, all of these up in the corner. There's 9 servers. They're running in Azure as virtual machines. The only one that's sharing a role is the domain controller is also a SQL server. But we've got SharePoint. This is SharePoint 2016 Beta 2. It hasn't been updated to. Oh no! Come back. Come back. I'm still connected. It's okay if it doesn't. I've actually got a bit of a workaround here. Here, let me just do this and do this. So that's the central administration that I've got here. You can kind of tell which environment I'm on by the top bar. So right now, anything you see that's black, like that guy, or if I jump over here and show you this one, this is SharePoint 2016 running on premises, okay? This one is SharePoint 2013 running on premises. And then finally, the middle one here is, as it says right there, Office 365. And so the whole goal of this is that I've got things like file shares, I've got BCS search results. So if I do a search here, you'll learn a few different little search tricks. One of them is if you want to get everything back from your index, just type star. It's a wildcard search, and it will just pull everything back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit narrower search. Let's search for SharePoint hybrid search, just as an example. So I'm going to do that in 2013. So this is a SharePoint 2013 farm running a SharePoint 2013 Search Center. And the other thing I have to point out to you is that back in November, we were thrilled when our search index contained about 700 items, contained content from SharePoint 2013, content from SharePoint 2010, content from file shares, BCS, as well as Office 365. We got all the plumbing working. And then about a month ago, they started doing scale and load testing. And in order to do that, they turned the crawler at Wikipedia. And they started crawling Wikipedia. And then what happened is they started crawling other places too. So what I noticed in here is right away I'm seeing blogs.office.com. I see Channel 9. I see bainsight.com. So I went up here and I typed in McDermott because I'm just curious. And sure enough, I start finding results from like my mobile. So here's Twitter mobile. Here's the Office Dev podcast. So it branched out and started crawling the whole world. There's about 4.5 million items in this index right now that they're pretty sure that's the number that they got for the scale. So remember, there's somebody who's watching the Azure storage of this index who's fascinated by this stuff. It kind of gets in the way of my demo because obviously there's a lot of other stuff showing up here. So I'm going to try to narrow this down a little bit. But just remember this, if I've got SharePoint hybrid search up here, and if I decide to do, let me do another little refiner here. I'm going to do content source local. And this is going to just pull, whoops, is it not in there? We'll stick with SharePoint hybrid search for now. Just to show you. So here I am, and I've got, how about just PowerPoint documents? There we go. Okay, so here's, you see it's Neil H. SPO1, Neil H. SPO1. Here's nellymonet.sharepoint.com. So it's pulling from our local SharePoint environment as well as Office 365, because the SharePoint.com is definitely our Office 365 environment. And this is from SharePoint 2013. So I'll take the same search and we'll show it throw it into SharePoint 2016. Because again, all of these environments are connected to the same hybrid index. And so we've got blogs.office.com right there at the top. And as I scroll down or choose PowerPoint here, I should see them. Enterprise search, services, enterprise search. If I come over here, enterprise search, services, enterprise search. So it's exactly the same results, which is what you would expect from both of my on-premises environments. Now, if I go here and do the same search in Office 365, and then if I refine down on PowerPoint, I get the same exact results. And so that's the big ta-da, right? That's what we're working toward. So instead of showing you that all the way at the end, like, please just finally show me the results, now you've seen it, okay? This is what you're shooting for. In order to make this happen, though, you need to set up some infrastructure. But it's a lot easier than it looks. The different workloads that you can set up using Office 365 start with kind of the end user workload of hybrid OneDrive. In order to set up hybrid OneDrive, it used to be like 27 PowerShell scripts, plus you needed to know your way around certificates. Now you want to know what you do? Well, you can do it the hard way, which is you can go into SharePoint. Here's SharePoint 2016. You go to the Office 365 tab. This is the hard way. And you go configure hybrid OneDrive and sites. You type in the URL to your my site host in Office 365, so that's SharePoint.com, and then you decide, do you want to do OneDrive and Sites or just OneDrive? And then you click OK. That's the hard way. Not kidding. Because you want to know the easy way? When you're inside your environment, when you're inside one of your SharePoint servers, like the one that hosts central administration, you go to Office 365, you log into your tenant. So I'm on the box that's going to connect to Office 365. I come in here, I go to the SharePoint tab. In here, I go Configure Hybrid. And then in here, I click the link. Okay? And I'm not going to do it in this environment. We actually do it in our class. Because what it does is it goes, oh, I'm already sitting on the box, so let me give you that certificate, and I'll take the certificate back, and we'll just handshake and wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and all of a sudden it's all set up. Because it actually launches a click-once application that handles the negotiation between machines. So when Rackspace is telling you it's going to take 8 days to set up hybrid, now you know. Okay? So yeah, so there's this hybrid picker. Now right now the workloads are for OneDrive and Sites. There are new workloads coming because the search is a no-brainer. They've got it down to a PowerShell script. So pretty soon it's going to be one of these apps as well. It's not there yet, but it's definitely coming. So what is hybrid OneDrive? Well, hybrid OneDrive is if I'm sitting in Office 365, okay, I've got this big app launcher, okay? Well, if I'm in my SharePoint 2016 on-premises environment and I click the app launcher, this OneDrive is Office 365. It's not on-premises anymore. So it automatically handles the redirection for your end users immediately. Like as soon as you say, yep, we're going to do it, it goes. So what if you are an organization that has seasonal employees? You want all of your on-premises employees to have on-premises My Sites. You store their stuff there. But for these seasonal employees, why not OneDrive? Because that way you only pay for that OneDrive as long as they're using it, and as soon as they're done for the season, it's gone. Scalability is a piece of cake. You can do that in the picker. You can say, here's an audience who gets the redirection. And so if they have an attribute on their user profile that says they're a seasonal employee, or if they're in a group, an Active Directory group of seasonal employees, then when they click on that app launcher, it's going to take them to Office 365, whereas your on-premises employees, your full-time employees, will stay on-premises. So you can split the hybrid experience that way as well. Cool? Something to think about. Okay. So the next one is hybrid sites. Hybrid sites, depends on who you talk to, but essentially hybrid sites is that if I go in the app launcher and I click Sites right here, what I see is the Sites tab in Office 365, but it's actually a bit more than that. Neil's already following this site. Let me see which one this is. This is my intranet. So I think he's already following this one. But essentially, if I'm on premises, which right here, this SharePoint environment is on premises, if I click follow here, what happens is the follow tag, the information that would ordinarily stay inside my firewall, is sent securely out to Office 365. So any on-premises sites that I follow, any sites that I follow in Office 365 are all stored in one place on my profile in Office 365. Okay? So that's what the hybrid sites feature is. It's sort of this, what's the central location for all of the stuff that I follow? If I click up here, take me up to my list of all the sites that I follow, I'll start seeing them here. So this was 2 links before, the followed sites now it's 3. Kind of cool. That's the one in our lab that's like 3 instructions because I haven't used the hybrid picker. It just takes that long to set that up. So they're making it easier to onboard people into this hybrid world. They're making it a lot easier to get our information into Office 365 and put it all in one place where it can be managed. Now, the next one's a no-brainer. I do not understand why any company that is currently managing their own extranet, forget about the sites, they're managing identities, right? Oh no, we're gonna keep our SharePoint environment pure. We're gonna have Matt from Able Blue, we're gonna give him a login. Oh, we don't put him in our Active Directory. We have a separate Active Directory that Matt's login goes into. Okay. So who's responsible for that login? Oh, Bob. Bob, the AD guy, our AD guy. Oh, okay. Good. So does Bob know when they fired me for stealing my company's records? No, because we're not going to send Bob an email and say, hey, oh, by the way, we're doing great, but we fired Matt. So shut off his password, his username and password. Oh, well, we do every 30 days, we rotate passwords. Yeah, but Matt's a sneaky guy. He has an alarm set, and every 28 days, he goes in and changes his password. So he complies. Then comes the time when you have to have that uncomfortable conversation where, yeah, we let Matt go 6 months ago, and I have no idea what he did to your SharePoint environment. Probably use SharePoint Designer on it. So you're managing the identities of somebody else. Well, ADFS can help you with that, right? ADFS allows you to federate with another company so that if they shut off my access in the other company, I no longer have access to yours. But are you going to do that for a two-person company? I don't have a domain controller. I use Office 365. Okay? So let's change that. Let's say we go to Office 365 and we set up hybrid extranet and we set up external sharing. Now I can send the identity out to you. I can still manage that. I still have to manage the identities and the external sharing. But if I have a concern as an administrator, I can just shut off external sharing completely and stop people from getting access to our stuff. So you can manage who can send, who can share, and hybrid extranets are just kind of a no-brainer now. And the last one, of course, hybrid search. That's why we're here. I think this is really the breadwinner, and hopefully by the end of this, you'll see that, particularly for very large organizations, this just makes a ton of sense. So our next slide. Okay, so let me give you a couple scenarios that they have run through. The first one is this. I have Doghouse Toys as my domain. I have 2 SharePoint server deployments. I have 2013. I have a legacy 2010 deployment. I've got a whole bunch of content and file shares and stuff like that. In order to support that environment, I've got 14 application servers because I've got my SharePoint environment plus I've got a highly available SharePoint 2013 environment, highly available SharePoint 2010 environment, and then I've got a ton of content that I'm crawling. So this is my build out. What I want to do is I want to start moving to Office 365. So the first move I decide to make is I stand up a hybrid tenant, or I stand up a tenant. I get my OneDrives out and I move that support forum that I had in 2013 up into the content. And what that means I can do is I can move to 13 application servers. That didn't help too much. 3 content. I still have a ton of search that I'm doing. So what I do now is I stand up something called the SharePoint, and we can do this in 2013 or in 2016, Cloud Search Service Appliance, or Cloud Search Service Application. So now, instead of supporting an on-premises search, I push it all into Office 365. What does that buy me? Well, that means I can move down to 5 application servers because I get rid of my whole search architecture. All I need is crawlers. In this case, I'm just going to use 2 so that I have a level of redundancy. So I have 2 search servers that are doing the crawling. Everything else happens in my SharePoint Online search farm. So what's the config? Well, the config is actually pretty straightforward. We stand up a cloud search service application. It's just like a regular search service application. You just check a box. Then you set up the local crawling architecture. That still takes a little bit of planning. I mean, obviously in class we just do 1, but if you're going to have, a terabyte of content that you're crawling, 1 crawler isn't enough. You're going to want to have more than that. You're going to want to have redundancy. You still need to have databases that support that crawler. Then you need to support some of the prerequisites for security and identity. The security and identity bits, that's the synchronized user profiles and the synchronized identities with Office 365. And then if you want, you have the option of combining old and new hybrid search. So let's say that you have a secure environment where you have documents that absolutely positively cannot be in Office 365. Great. Don't crawl them with your cloud provider. Just crawl them with your regular search architecture. We'll talk about that in a sec. And then you have to change up your architecture for query because you're not going to do your queries on premises anymore. It's all coming from the cloud. So here we go. You need to start with a hybrid environment with Office 365 that supports a SharePoint subscription. If you don't have SharePoint, you can't do this. Okay, so you can't have just like Office Home. Okay, you have to have one of the plans that has Office 365 plus SharePoint. So in this case, we're using E3s. There's a lot of different plans that support SharePoint, but kind of entry is E3. And then we have to do Active Directory synchronization with Active Directory users and groups. That's the first part. And that, like I said, that's Active Directory sync, and it's not very challenging to set up. And then for basic search requirements, we can crawl SharePoint 2007. We can crawl SharePoint 2010, 2013, 2016, file shares, and BCS. So we can crawl all of that stuff. Now, the hybrid component itself runs either in SharePoint 2013 or SharePoint 2016. It doesn't run in SharePoint 2010. What you do is stand up a 2013 box and crawl 2010 or crawl 2007. And then you stand up a SharePoint search service application with the cloud service checkbox ticked. Then, if you want those fancy previews, which everybody wants their previews, there's one more step. And that is, Brian, thank you, that is to set up the reverse proxy because you have to host your own web application server for your own on-premises previews. Okay. So that's it. So then what you do is you deploy this cloud SSA. So that is simply standing up a regular old search service application, but after I think it was the October cumulative updates from last year that put it into 2013. So now it was August. And then you have a cloud index property on there that's true. I think in 2013 you can only do this in PowerShell, but now in 2016 there's a checkbox there that you can check in the UI if you are UI centric. So you just do, and then you can check whether it's actually been enabled with the get sp enterprise search service application.cloud index. The onboarding process, this used to actually be like 9 steps. It's a PowerShell script now. If you start off in the hybrid center, which is hybrid.office.com, you will not find it because the link is broken. I'll show you where you can get it. And then back in November, they promised us that eventually there will be hybrid picker. The fact that they got it down to a single, actually working, awesome PowerShell script makes our life a lot easier. Next slide. So let me show you what this guy looks like real quick. So I'm here in a, let's see, let's jump over to here. So if I go into, if I scroll up and I go into App Management in SharePoint 2016, and I go to Manage Service Applications, and I go up here and do New Search Service Application. That's where I see this Cloud Search Service Application checkbox, okay? So there is a PowerShell script, there's a PowerShell flag for it as well. But that's the first step, is standing up that search service application. The next step is finding the script. So here you go. Here is hybrid.office.com. Has all kinds of fun stuff, fast tracks, downloads, all kinds of neat things. If you jump over here to downloads, here's the hybrid picker, and down here is the I think it was here. Oh, they actually got it fixed. Yay! Okay. So here's an ebook on the cloud hybrid scenarios. This is actually, if this is the version I'm thinking of, might be a little bit old, but just today, it's MS Press. I have a link to it at the end. Did I put it in here? Microsoft Press just released the free ebook for, let's do MS Press. Here it is, free ebook. Literally today, or yesterday, I guess, they published it. So this is a great ebook for planning, publishing. It is absolutely the most current information on planning and preparing for SharePoint Hybrid. If you want to do anything with directory synchronization, Office PNP, actually under the Office Dev GitHub account, Office PNP has all of the information on SharePoint directory synchronization, but the script that you want is this one, the Windows PowerShell script for Cloud Hybrid. You'll notice the publication dates. I mean, this stuff has been revved very consistently for quality. The stuff in Office PNP is changing daily, sometimes hourly, okay? Because somebody out there is really invested in making sure that not only does directory synchronization pull in all the stuff Microsoft says, but pull in the attributes that he wants, like photo, and he wants to make sure write back is working. So there's somebody out there who's generating pull requests and uploading new content into GitHub that they're checking and then validating before they push it back out. So this is awesome that Microsoft has moved to using GitHub for our content, the downloadable content. But like I said, the downloads right now for the SharePoint script or the cloud scripts are right here. You simply run the scripts after you've created the SSA. It's one line of PowerShell, and it spits out all the information it needs to be able to generate the connection to your Office 365 tenant. Once you've got the tenant set up, it routes the data from the SharePoint crawlers up to Office 365. And the crawl flow is really interesting. So here's the demo of crawling. I'm going to jump into, actually, let me go to my desktop. Let's go Windows D here. So I've got a document here. It's empty. I need the name of an animal. No, it can't be elephant. I already used elephant today. Chimpanzee. That's why I'm in Word. Did I get it right? I did. Give me one more. Armadillo. Armadillo. We're in Texas. And then I'm just going to put in some more content in here just so we have a little weight of content. And I'm going to save that. So here's a document called Office Spug. It has armadillo and chimpanzee in it. Let's drop down here and let's go to, let's see. Let me go to that one. Let's go here. So I'm going to jump back on premises. Here's my Office 365 site. That's not the one I want. What I want is my 20. Is this it? That's not it either. This is the joy of being in someone else's. There we go. Is this it? Yep, SharePoint 16. Okay. So here's the Austin Spug demo notes. This is the one I did earlier today when I was waking up the whole system. And so what I'm going to do is take this one. The difference between these two documents in terms of the title is that this one does not have Office 365 in it. That's the one that's already there. That's the one that has elephant in it, Travis, just so you know why I said no, you can't use that one. Okay, so I've got that in. So I'm going to jump into central administration here. Here's my 2016 Cloud SSA. And I'm going to kick off a crawl. And then while this crawl is running, we'll talk about what's actually happening, because a lot of people get worried about pushing all of their content into the cloud okay, there we go. All right. So crawling content. We just kicked off a crawl. Yes, because it's just one site. Nah, that's not where I want to start. I want to start down here. Okay. So what's actually happening is, so the blue part, Office 365. The green part, everything in my corporate network. So we just launched a full crawl, which means that down here, our cloud search service application is doing all the file crawling and parsing. It's requesting from SharePoint the content, it's getting the content back, and it's crawling and parsing that content. I mentioned that there was a PowerShell script that we ran to connect our two services together. During that communication, they handshook and exchanged certificates. So this information gets wrapped up and secured with a certificate, shipped across the internet, and then it gets unpacked in Office 365. So it starts out in a work queue, it gets pushed up there in a work queue, gets stored in a blob store, content gets parsed again, and then content processing occurs. If you're familiar with SharePoint 2013 search, content processing is a very intense but important part of how the content gets moved into our index. That moves it into the Office 365 SharePoint Online index. The access control list is then mapped. It goes against our Azure Active Directory. Remember, we had a prerequisite that we made sure that directory synchronization was working. That's how, when I'm down here and we'll have a slide in a minute about query. Down here, when we make our query, it's using that connected identity through Azure Active Directory to be able to pull that information back. Like I said before, SharePoint 2013, SharePoint 2010, 2007, our file shares and all of our BCS stuff can get crawled by our cloud search service application. And then it gets pushed up into Office 365 where the content is stored in the index. So under the hood, this is actually probably I think that they said that this was one of the fastest turnarounds of new technology at Microsoft when it was pertaining to Office 365. What they already had is Office 365 crawling internally SharePoint content and pushing the information into this indexing API. All of that was already working. The piece that they turned around really quickly was they said, you know what? We've already got this endpoint. Why don't we just tell their crawler to hit that endpoint and then secure it with a certificate? And so that's essentially what's happening is the Office 365 content is being processed exactly the same way as our on-premises environment. And then that also allows it to be, allows the information to be available to the Office Graph as well as Delve. So, security. Over here, my SharePoint 2013, my SharePoint 2016 environment, it finds new documents, the crawler's doing its work. What happens is it grabs these batches and then sends them. It doesn't do document at a time across the internet. It's not trickling that stuff across. What it's doing is it's wrapping up the access control list that it found on premises, the keywords, the metadata, the tenant information, that's our Office 365 destination, and the analytics, and it's wrapping this in a secure wrapper as a batch and then pushing it across. If we had more time or we were way nerdy, I'd show you all this in Fiddler. Okay, and what you see is trickle, 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 boom, big old chunk. Those are these batches going across the wire. Okay, then that gets unpacked, like I showed you, goes through the indexing API and into a SharePoint Online index. Brian. So how do you validate your implementation? Can you tell that we're killing time while it's crawling our stuff? You can use the ULS logs or Fiddler. If you dial up your ULS logs to verbose, you can see all of this stuff. You'll see me do this in a demo in just a sec. Managed properties in SharePoint Search are a really important thing to understand. The more you do with SharePoint Search, the more you should understand how managed properties work. They're essentially the special little keywords that we're allowed to use. So for instance, if I do isDocument equals 1, it means it's not a person. It means it's not a site. It's a document of some kind. Okay, that's just a built-in managed property. Is my document. That means it came off your My site. Yeah, it's interesting. So you can use these things. Well, there's a new one. Is external content. Is external content means it's not in SharePoint Online, which used to be a really cool demo because I'd go to SharePoint Online, I'd do is external content :1, and you'd only see my SharePoint stuff from my on-premises environment. Now you see Wikipedia and Twitter and Rackspace.com in there because they did this load testing, so not quite as sexy as it was before. I'm going to switch it around. I'm going to go to on-premises, do a search, and then I'm going to do is external content :0, and I'm only going to see Office 365. I'm making you that promise now. Also, if you're a developer, you can use the developer search API, the RESTful API, and simply pass in is external content true. Brian? Okay. This is what I think is so cool about this. And actually, we went through an entire session at Ignite, and I loved what they were saying. And they never said this until we walked up to the podium and asked, if you have a global presence with your farms, one click. So you have SharePoint farms in all of these locations. If you're not using the cloud search service, you have to figure out how are you going to allow your employees to search everything if they need to, okay? And what a lot of companies do is they say, you know what, if you execute a search on the farm in Australia, you're going to get Australian content. Because pretty much everybody in Australia is searching for stuff that they made locally. But we're going to give you a link that takes you to our global search center. And the global search center is where we're going to crawl across the WAN all of our farms, which means you're paying for the WAN and you're paying for the storage for all of that stuff. And then you have to decide how often do you do the crawls. Instead, change that up. One click. Go to Office 365, and every one of these farms can reference the same tenant. So one click, they all push into one index. So now, no more crawling across the WAN. Every farm crawls itself locally, pushes its content up to Office 365, and then wherever I am, I can reference, I can crawl, I can search for content from everywhere. Now you have the opposite problem, right? Because now you got to build a search center that says, you know what, you're from Australia, so those tabs in the search center, you can audience target those. So I can have a tab there that says Australian content because I looked at your user profile and I figured out that you were from the Australian company. So I can just have a tab there that says Australian content, and then have some way, a content source that just specifies that farm. Very trivial to do. It's actually an easier problem to solve than the whole crawling across the WAN problem. It's a 10-minute problem.
Matt, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
How about performance? Where are the Azure data centers?
Where are the Azure data centers? They're in the cloud, Brian.
Where's the footprint? I know, I think there's a new one in India.
Well, it all depends on your SLA. It depends on how big your company is. It depends on a lot of things. So I will answer as a SharePoint consultant. It depends. Okay. So next slide. All right. So how did it work? Let's see. Exactly. Okay. So did it work? Let's see. We should be back to idle here. We are. So now I'll let you guys decide. SharePoint 2013, 2016, or Office 365. We're looking for chimpanzee. Come on, this is the audience participation part. What is it? REST API. REST API. Yeah, I got your REST API right here. I'll do that afterwards. I could do it, but okay, so I'll choose Office 365. So if I search for, I should get did I spell it right? I think I spelled it right. So what did we do? We did chimpanzee and we did what else? Armadillo. There it is. Okay, so it's there. Go back to 2013. Remember, this came from a SharePoint site here on our intranet. Of course, if I search for it here, I'm going to find it because this is that awful. Boy, talk about features I wish they'd get rid of. They got rid of SharePoint Foundation. I wish they'd get rid of this OSS search results page, right? So, but let me go to my search center here. And same thing, searching here, as you'd expect, we still find it. So crawling works. Crawling works. What about query? Well, the query architecture is what we showed you before, and here's Jaden, and so she is in Office 365. So her token that she's logged in with has her online identity and all of her membership groups. So when she executes a query, it goes against the SharePoint Online Index, and that query then, any queries that she does from the on-premises farm, it sends her query out to Office 365, but it also adds to that query her user identity. The user identity gets rehydrated in Office 365, and then it shows them search or security trimmed results. If we had more time, they kind of broke this part of the demo, I think, but we have a file share that we crawl. And I could log in as a different user and show you that that user doesn't have access to the file share. And when I do the search, you don't see the file share. Then I log in as somebody else and you do see it. But take my word for it, all of the security trimming, as long as you have the identity federation working correctly, all of the identity stuff works just fine. The dir sync requires this MS Online on-premise security identifier. It's actually gotten a lot easier. You don't have to mess with that anymore. You just have to make sure that you're using the same. It's not the SID. It's the UPN. You just make sure the UPNs are all set up and you're good to go. So the security principles can be managed on premises and synced to the cloud using dir sync. If you are not using dir sync now and you're thinking about going this way, don't use dir sync. Start with AAD Connect. Okay, start with the Azure Active Directory Connect, because that's the one that they're going to support going forward. dir sync's the one that they've been supporting, and at some point in the future, we'll stop supporting that. Plus, the AAD Connect is trivially easy to work with. You've been working with it since SharePoint 2013 anyway. It's got that familiar, starts with an F, has an I in the middle and an M at the end, interface. So just get used to it. Because then if you go to 2016, you get rid of FIM on premises. Yay! You get MIM. It's the same thing. Okay, it's just that they updated it, right? So it doesn't matter. Use the current tools. This slide says has directory synchronization and dir sync, but you'll be using AAD Connect. Next. Oh, this is dir sync / AAD Connect / FIM, showing you the SID that's in there with the on-premises security identifier. Okay, so I have a problem. I have a company that absolutely positively will never go to the cloud. Well, maybe they will. But not with this stuff, okay? We'll look at, they have time. They have a lot of stuff, right? We have a terabyte of content stored in SharePoint. You know how long it's going to take for our security people to go through that content and go, this can't go, this can. This can't go, this can. It's like cleaning out your garage. What's easier? What's easier is we going to start a project tomorrow. Can I put that stuff in the cloud? Oh yeah, because that decision can be made because we haven't produced any content yet. You with me? So I've got all this content on premises that we're got to keep on premises, and we're not really sure whether it's secure or not. But then we've got all this new stuff that we're willing to put in the cloud as long as it's been approved and blessed. Okay? So we've got a split approach. We have some business sensitive content needs to stay on premises and indexed on premises, cannot show up in the Office 365 index. Okay? So you stand up 2 search services. Simple as that. You have one regular old SharePoint 2013, 2016 search service without the little checkbox. You build your own index on premises. You store that content on premises. You support your own databases. You do all of the managed metadata stuff that you're going to do. You do all of the managed properties that you're going to do to that. Separate. If you want to produce a search center that actually shows that content, then you're back to the old way of doing query federation, having kayak.com, right? Having the 2 separate panels with the 2 separate sets of stuff. Or you could have tabs, right? You could have the everything except the super sensitive stuff tab and the super sensitive stuff tab. Simple as that. So really easy to do. Just combine the 2 search approaches and implement query federation if you decide to do that. Next slide, please. The architecture looks like this. Basically, you got your SharePoint Online index, but then down here you got your on-premises search service, and then you decide what to do with the search service or the search UI. It's up to you. Next slide. What about customization? You want to customize the heck out of it. It's SharePoint, right? Next slide. There's some stuff that you can do. With the hybrid search, the only thing that's happening on premises is crawl and parse. So once you set it up, everything else is managed in Office 365. Everything else is managed in Office 365. So all of the query-related settings, all of the index-related settings, those are all managed in Office 365 and SharePoint Online. So what is supported? Well, custom iFilters on premises over here. Custom iFilters. The out-of-the-box image format handlers, lame. It just does file name. I want to know the camera and the f-stop and the photographer. Well, get another iFilter for images, implement them in your on-premises environment, and you'll get that information in Office 365. BCS connectors. I still haven't shown BCS results. I got to do that. If you guys have seen me demo before, you've seen me do my my customers demo. We have that over here in SharePoint. We have that over here in SharePoint. We have it in Office 365. Sweet. Okay. I thought we had it in 2013. I guess not. Okay. Well, that's cool. It's even better. So what do I have over here? Well, if I do a search for, I think these are pet stores. At least they used to be. And I go to customers. They're still pet stores. So these search results, these are database records coming from an on-premises customer database that we've crawled. We created an external content type using BCS, right? And then we promote those results with a custom display template in Office 365. And then we do custom refinement as well. So over here, I can type in pet stores. I can choose silver partners, and I can find the ones just in California. So I'm kind of doing BI. I'm hitting a database, right? I'm doing sort of BI light over here in the search center. All of those queries, none of them hit the database, because it's only when you crawl with your crawler, it's only when you crawl the content that you're hitting the database. So if this customer database doesn't change that often, don't crawl it that often. But the performance is awesome, right? Because all of this is coming out of the Office 365 index. And so I've got all the custom refinement, I've got all of the custom display templates, all of that stuff built into SharePoint, available to me simply because the content is in a search index that's addressable by SharePoint. So that's the custom BCS part. So that means you can go against any database that your developers can write access to. Partner connectors, BA Insight writes connectors. That's their business, is connecting SharePoint to stuff. Then you would have your connections work. Believe me, Jeff Fried and his guys, they are all over this, because it just means more stuff that they can crawl, because now companies can get access to it, and they've been one of the early adopters of the cloud search service application. What's not supported is anything that requires custom security trimming. because you have to use the ACLs that are built into your Active Directory environment, because that's what's getting shipped up to the cloud. So other things that are supported at the Office 365 level, tenant level schema mapping. What that means is managed properties. So you can create your own managed properties, but you create them in Office 365. Query rules, result sources, the display templates you saw, all of that stuff, you do it all in Office 365. What's not supported? Stuff at the site collection. That's kind of the wah of this. It's a bummer because one of the things that's nice about Office 365 is we can let our site collection administrators do some search stuff. In my experience, I don't find that many that really know what they're doing. So it ends up being an administrative activity anyway, or a SharePoint team activity anyway. But that is kind of a bummer. Obviously, no custom security trimming. Now, in SharePoint 2016 and SharePoint 2013 on premises, I have the option with the regular search engine because I have oh man, my brain just went. I have all 6 components of search running on premises. I can do custom entity extraction, which means I could have documents that get crawled, and if they have certain keywords in them, like breeds of dogs, let's say. Okay, I could compare those breeds of dogs to a schema and then automatically tag those documents. Very cool little demo that we do. Another one I do is upload a document that I just took from my cell phone. My cell phone tagged it with latitude and longitude. I have a custom crawler that goes through, and if it sees latitude and longitude, it sends it out to Bing and reverse geocodes it so I get an address. So now I go in, I upload an image, crawl it. 2 minutes later, I search for like Austin, and I find the image. The search I did before was Chicago, right? Because I took a picture of guys in Chicago, and it showed the image. Because we're not using the full search engine of SharePoint, we don't get that level of customization. So we don't get custom entity extraction, and we don't get the content extensibility web service or content enrichment web service, which is a little bit of a bummer. So you have a much tighter rein on what you can customize. Now, I just said all that. The demo, and you can go back to Channel 9, and you can pull up the Ignite conference. And Corey Roth and I did a session on extending SharePoint's search capabilities. And one of the demos I did is that latitude longitude demo. It took me longer to actually have the slide do all of the animation than it took to actually write the web service. It's not really true, but it's close. So you don't get this. So we did something instead. I said, it bums me out to tell an audience, hey, here's something cool, and you can't use it if you're in Office 365 only, right? So what I did is I took the code that I used to call that web service, and I wrote a little PowerShell script that uses the search API to say what new photos are out there. So I drop a photo into Office 365. Then I have a little timer job that runs, and you can run it in Azure, you can run it wherever you want, but I just did a PowerShell script. And it says, hey, search service, are there any new images that don't have this metadata on it? Like address. And I get back a set of search results. I get the image that I just uploaded in my result. So then what I do is I download the image, I send the image off to Bing, I get it back, and then instead of uploading the image, because I already have the ID, I just update the record that the image is on. And so we did the demo, upload the image, run the PowerShell, and then wait. I think it took us about 4 minutes. It's very long, 4 minutes. I was doing kind of a similar soft shoe that I'm doing right now. And then we searched for images of Uday in Chicago, because I tagged their faces as well, so their names were inside the file, and it popped it out. So you just have to think, okay, I can't use queues, I can't use the content enrichment web service, but what am I trying to do, right? What I'm doing is saying, there's content out there that doesn't have what I want on it. Can I find it? Yep, search does that. Is there an interface for me to update it? Yep, that's the client CSOM, the client-side object model. So even though you don't have this level of extensibility, you do have ways around it. You have ways of changing how you just use a different tool, right? Someone tells you can't use a wrench, use a hammer, right? So I mentioned there's this managed property for search results. This is the is external content property. And so what I can do is come up here and I can go back to my everything tab. So I'm in my on-premises SharePoint environment. Everything that is external content is outside of Office 365. So internal is in Office 365. So is external content equals 0. That means everything that is in Office 365. So that's going to show me everything. All of these URLs should have sharepoint.com on them, and they do. If I do the same search in my on-premises environment, then I'll see just Office 365. And this is the one I had to turn around, because if I say equals 1, it's going to show me the whole rest of the world. So here's Bing's toolbox. Okay, so you have to find other ways of figuring out where your content is, but you get the idea. So now what I can do is I can change up the UI. So I can create a tab for just stuff that's in SharePoint Online, or I can add a tab, and basically the search is search terms, not is external content 1. Well, that's a long way around the barn. You can just do is external content 0, right? It's false. So you can do that. This is also one of the first tips that you see. Okay, you got it up and running and it's working. Now shut it off. How do you do that? Well, what you do is you go into your search environment, because you want your I'm assuming that your end users are already productive and you don't want to get in their way. So what you do is go into your search environment and make sure that everything is external content equals 0, so that they're only seeing Office 365 while you're getting the on-premises stuff crawled correctly. There's nothing more fun than doing a search project for a client where they say, that file share, we ought to crawl that. And so you crawl it, and somebody comes screaming into the room, shut it down. We just found we just found the CEO's salary. Because you're finding content, right? You're crawling stuff that has probably never been crawled before. So so this is a fun one to use. So that's one example, search vertical. You can do other ones, if you will. So here's, so everything, this is logically everything. I find semantically everything is a challenge for some companies, because they say, is it really everything? Like, well, define everything for me. Well, everything except for that old file share. Okay, do you want to call it everything but the old file share? Or does your company know that everything is everything but the old file share, and you have a tab that says the old file share? That's super easy to do in SharePoint, but coming up with what everything is really important. Then you can do, like, this is support search. This is that example I gave you about, like, Australia. This is where you would just have a specific result source query where you're saying the search term is along a certain path, along specific content types, and those kinds of things. Very easy to do. Next. All right, so we're at the end of our show here. These I updated about 45 minutes ago. No, it's a little more than that. An hour and 45 minutes ago, and I was sitting at, because I clicked on a couple of them and they were totally dead links. But what I was finding hard to find was the best 2016, not SharePoint, but actual year of content. And so this is that planning and preparing for SharePoint Hybrid, the 2016 version that just shipped yesterday. Then there is if you're still on a SharePoint 2013 environment, the UI is a little different. So there is a separate set of guidance for SharePoint 2013. It all works the same. But that's on TechNet. And then the SharePoint that I talked about, configuring the workloads. This is a really long one, but this is a really nice link, because what it does is it says, what are you interested in doing in terms of hybrid workloads, and then links off to each of those. So if you just want to do hybrid OneDrive, it's on there. Shows you how to get ready for it and what to do. If you just want to do hybrid sites, it's on there. And of course, hybrid search is on there as well. And then there's this new hybrid search center. I had no idea this was even out there until today, called hybrid.office.com, that has a lot of really good information on it. I think that's our deck. We are right at 8 o'clock, just like I promised.
Okay, right on the money. So it's time for Q&A. So the floor is open, and Matt has agreed to stay up here.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be about hybrid. It could be about SharePoint 2016 or this new awesome class that I'm producing and actually presenting on Monday, or MCSE SharePoint, or running a 5-page. I'm also doing on Sunday. Go ahead.
So I was curious about licensing. So your Office 365 license includes your on-premise CAL, if I'm not mistaken?
Oh gosh, yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, but the thing is, I thought you were going to say, "What am I paying for storage?"
Nothing.
Right now, you're not.
Yeah.
That hybrid index, that's included. As long as you have SharePoint Online on your Office 365 license, you're good to go. Okay? They're not, I'll say that another way, they're not charging you for storage. Yeah. Go figure. 2016 and Microsoft's not charging us for something. You need Azure Active Directory as well. And that's why I always say, I'm safe to say E3 definitely, but they say, and I'm literally quoting, any Office 365 license that includes SharePoint Online. Because it means you have identity. So it doesn't mean you have to buy there's an Azure Active Directory subscription that's expensive, well, more expensive than just Office 365. You don't need that. You just need identity in the cloud and SharePoint Online.
So, Matt, the architecture you showed for globalization, and for the globalized environment.
You mean the photo depiction?
Yeah, I mean
it's called marketecture, is what that was.
Well, but the idea behind, I've searched through dealing with variations and all the other things that companies have done when they've had to deploy we've got different languages, you've got different translations, different language packs that are going to be coming back. So we start breaking down what these result sets are being returned in. You've got one index, and one of those properties may be which language do you want this returned in? Can you actually have a combination? Like I'm thinking France, for instance, you may have a requirement to have, here's your primary for this location. Here's what I want my primary language to be, and then secondary. Is that, configurable? Or
I will be completely honest with you. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm not trying to.
If you email me that question, I will forward it on. And please do email me that question because I think I had my email address at the beginning of the slides. If I didn't, I'll make sure it's up there. Because one of the things about the generous folks, there's my email address, just matthew@aptalon.com, or you can hit me on Twitter at MatthewMcD. One of the things about presenting this content over and over and trying to be a knowledge expert, I am certainly not the expert, I just teach people how to do this stuff, is I run into questions like that I hadn't really considered. And they want to know what those questions are.
That's the typical scenario.
So if I have to depend on my memory, it's not going to make it past the door.
Right. That's the typical scenario that I've seen is that when you have globalized content, it usually is difference by language. And what I've seen is we end up setting up either a new tenant specific to that language.
So I can tell you that so first of all, the tenant, there can be only one.
Right.
Correct. So you can't crawl tenant to tenant, okay? Because the index is based on the tenant subscription ID. But in terms of language recognition, it depends on a lot. I will tell you that my experience has been it depends on a lot of variables. Variables like, are they using a French installation of the operating system with a French installation of Word and authoring in French, which is very different from grabbing my laptop and writing in French in Word. Do you see what I mean? Sure. Is that the automatic language detection looks at a lot of different cues for what's the native language of this document. And so if they're doing all of that appropriately, then I can tell you that it is more than likely that the automatic language detection in Office 365 will work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'll send you.
But send me an email, and I know a couple of guys that are responsible for this stuff, and they'll be able to give you a very specific, like, if they are doing this, this, and this, then yes, it works.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Gal in the middle here, thank you.
So I have a question pertaining to OneDrive for Business. And I thought about it when you were talking about the seasonality and how you segregated those people.
Right.
In my company, the concern is that individuals doing a work and storing content that others become dependent upon it. And for whatever reason, the person leaves the company either on his own volition or otherwise, that the thought process is that they could lose that content. So is that justified, that fear? And if so, how do you mitigate something
The fear is
like
justified, and the problem is governance. Okay? Because you said something really important. Others have become dependent on that. If it's in my site and 27 people are dependent on it, get it off my site. Get it into a team site, get it into an Office 365 group, get it into a team sharing modality instead of a me modality, right? So OneDrive is me, team sites are we, is the little meme that I saw float by the Twitter sphere a year ago. And it's about having people understand the life cycle of documents. As soon as you share with me, hey, here's something I'm working on, I'm like, wow, this is awesome. We should, as soon as those words come out, it should be, we should move this to where we can work on it together and raise and elevate that document. Is it easy? No. Is it dependent on human behavior? Yeah. Is it fraught with disaster? Absolutely. But losing it, you can still prevent the destruction of content by correct governance. So when those employees are sunsetted, when they are released in October because they all have to go back to college, then what have they been working on? Their manager ought to know. And really that's what you're looking at, is there's still a human element to, did Matt, when he was here as a seasonal employee, boil the ocean and come up with the next killer idea? Then get it off my site. Okay, sure.
Yeah. Years ago, I worked at a 501c3 nonprofit, and Microsoft gave us a lot of nice deals. We could buy an Office Pro license for $20, Exchange CALs for $2. What kind of nonprofit programs are there with Office 365?
I don't know, but I know that there's somebody here who can.
Coming from the nonprofit world and helping secure a bunch of donations to the Microsoft nonprofit, they have a whole program. You sign up and you get E1s. And the only restriction is you can't use it for personal or commercial purposes, and they want those licenses used by folks who are regularly involved with the nonprofit, like board members and staff. So you fill out an app. There is I forget the URL, but there is a nonprofit, Cloud for Nonprofit. You get E1s. It does include SharePoint, Exchange Online, Azure, Active Directory, online versions of Word, Excel, that whole thing. And with the nonprofits I've been involved in, we've put it to great use.
Yeah, I should be clear. I'm not with Microsoft. I just stand up here and talk about the stuff. But thank you, Brian. And actually, along those same lines, if you have an idea and you want to incubate that, if you haven't heard of BizSpark, go out and check it out. And that is the craziest deal Microsoft has going. I've launched 4 different organizations on BizSpark, and it's 5 years of everything Microsoft has for this much money. So you should check it out. It's absolutely worth it. We're coming close on time, I think. We're about 4 minutes away. Any other questions? One other deal that's going that is really important to me, near and dear to my heart, is if you are interested in getting certified with Microsoft, there are definitely pros and cons to the amount of time it takes to get certified. What the deal they have going is right now it's called a booster pack. So for a regular human being in the United States to take a certification test is $150. Okay? If you pass, and you don't have to take the test again. If you fail, you go study and you pay another $150. But every couple of months, Microsoft goes through a period like they're going through now where they will give you a free retake. They're not doing that right now. But for $50, you get 4 free retakes. For another $50, you get a free month's access to the practice test. Okay? So for $225, you're guaranteed is $75 of insurance, basically, to ensure that you pass that damn test. We still recording? I hope so. And so I took the test. I took my final test today, and I got to tell you, I went in knowing. I should say I came out realizing that I knew about half of what was on the test, because it's one of those kinds of tests that tests everything around the edges of the stuff that you never use in SharePoint, because they pretty much know you know the middle bit. And I would rather bang my head against the floor than take that test again. But I passed it by this much because I did the practice test like 8 times. Okay? And I had the confidence going in that, hey, if I don't pass, I'll take it again, and it won't cost me anything. So they're doing that. I think they're doing that for another 4 months. Okay? And the other one that they'll do is at Ignite, the tests are all half price. That's why I did 2 tests while I was in Chicago. And so you can, they're either half price or they're $50, which is less than half price. So if you're interested, just something to look out for if you're thinking about getting certified. There are paths. Anyway, I'm all done.
We get asked to participate in the beta test. And so you can take the beta test, and you have to wait like 6 or 8 weeks to get the results because they don't score it right away. And then as an MCT, you get a pass for $75 to get your MCT.
Matt, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. So,
Thank you guys for coming and for restarting the user group. It just became a lot for Richard and I to manage between travel schedules. And to give you an idea, last year when Brian said we were on hiatus, the last 3 months of the year I was on the road for 9. Last 3 months of the year I was on the road for 9 weeks, and that includes Thanksgiving and around Christmas. So
yeah, for 7 years.
yeah, for 7 years.
Yeah. So, and just so you know, we do have the Godfather standing behind us, so we always have the benefit of their experience. Now, I do want to clarify one thing on the nonprofit donation. I want to add to the good news, to the story, is that the pricing that they offer for E3 or for the editions that include the desktop clients, again, if you're part of that program, it's fantastic. What I don't know, and I'm not sure is the case, is that tenant has the Azure Active Directory that will do hybrid search.
SharePoint, like I said, it has SharePoint, it has the identity. So
Okay.
I'm pretty sure the E1.
Okay. So I guess my point is you still want to talk to Matt on hybrid search. Okay.
The home edition, you can synchronize your Active Directory.
Home edition.
Anything but.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. E3 nonprofit, $450 a user per month.
$4.50.
Yes. It's incredible.
It is $4 a user.
And E1 is 0. So if you're working with a nonprofit, it's not that hard.
Kids going into college, they get 4 years for $60, and they get a terabyte of storage for all their Office documents, and that goes to 4 or 5 devices.
Yeah.
So the laptop, the tablet, their phone, all that's covered. It's awesome. I'm telling you.
It's fantastic. All right, so we do ask our sponsors in general to make sure that try to limit their remarks, and we know that our friends at Rackspace did that. As a matter of fact, I think they were so limited in their remarks, and I was so excited to introduce Matt that we forgot to thank them appropriately. So Bill, if you would come up here, please, because I want to make sure that we know who our sponsor was, and also, Bill, if you can tell us how to contact you. So first of all, tell me what the new offering that is that you're rolling out.
So with the launch of SharePoint 2016 that Microsoft is announcing next week, of course, Rackspace has a long history of hosting both dedicated and multi-tenant SharePoint. Our dedicated environment is now going to have the 2016 version available on the day of launch from Microsoft. So for someone that's looking for someone to host the 2016 version of SharePoint, or if you're looking to move into the cloud and you need help with that, Rackspace absolutely has that capability and all of the available support to make it work with Office 365 and the hybrid stuff that Matt's been talking about. And then we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of our full fanatical support for Office 365 offering also, which has been really exciting. There's some great stuff happening around that with some exclusive bundles and services that'll be available from Rackspace through our partnership with Microsoft that you won't be able to get anywhere else. So, as we said at the beginning, we love being involved with the community, and thank you all so much for coming out. And I have some information on our support services for Office 365 in the back. We have all new materials with SharePoint launching next week, so I didn't bring any of that stuff today. But please take some t-shirts and take some Office 365 notebooks and take food home to your wives and husbands, since we have a lot of leftover back there. But thanks again for coming, and we'll be working with the coordinators to come up with some of our MVPs here at Rackspace to give presentations. We'll probably have some opportunity to have people from Microsoft come by, and we have access to some really cool demos with Office 365 that we could always find some time to do that too for all of y'all. Okay. So thanks again.
All right, you're welcome, and you have our fanatical appreciation.
Appreciate it.
All right.
You know the geekiness around the dates for SharePoint, right? Yeah. It went RTM on Pi Day.
Oh, no.
Going live on Star Wars Day.
So the floor is open. Any announcements for the community here? Any events, anything that your companies are sponsoring or other groups that you may be part of that you want to let other members aware of? Jim?
Whoever didn't get to sign in, see me before you leave.
Okay. And our meetup site is new for the user group. And if any of you all are members of other meetup groups or user groups in town, there's a chance you may be familiar with Meetup. It's brand new for us. Meetup has a lot of great tools. If you've RSVP'd, you've probably already seen that you can see who's coming. What I encourage you to do is whitelist the meetup emails that come to you. Even some of our own leaders missed the meeting announcement because Meetup sometimes gets spam trapped. You may be a member of another Meetup and you may just shove them off in another folder. So whitelist our Meetup email. All right, so next month's meeting is May the 25th, again, fourth Wednesday of the month, and our program chair has something to share with us.
So for next month, David Warner, he works for Catapult System here in town. He's a great UI guy. He will be demoing how you can brand SharePoint online. So it's going to be a really cool session. I hope you guys can make it. And I see a few guys here. All right. So that's it. So next month, May 25th?
May 25th.
Yep, there you go.
Okay. Thanks very much. We look forward to seeing you next month.